so it's 2 o'clock. I think we should start. I'm not very good at prolonged introductions or introductions at all. And it turns out I've been pronouncing Benicia's name incorrectly the whole time. So she corrected me today. She graduated recently from, that seems recent to me, from Grambling with a BA in art, is that correct? And then she's going to tell you the rest of her story, and then I'll introduce Adonis when she finishes up. Yay!
Hey guys. How are you guys doing? Good. You guys surviving? Yeah. Okay. Well, my name is Benicia, pronounced Benicia. It means blessed one in Latin, and if you speak Spanish or Italian, it's also pronounced Benicia. I was born March 18th, 1994, so I'm Pisces. Grew up in Grambling, Louisiana, which is 30 minutes from here. And I went to Ruston High School. And I went to college and a few places, so we'll get into that next. So this is me in high school. I used to do music. I used to play the clarinet, and then I quit. And when I quit, I was trying to figure out like what my other interests were and what I would go into next. So the next few slides are some photography from my family members back in the day. So this is just to show how photography was prominent in my life growing up. So my grandfather and like my mom, my brother, my aunts, they were pretty skilled in photography. And this is still like in Grambling. So yeah, back to high school. There were no photography classes at Ruston, so I just learned on my own. And then I was using my friends to develop my skill with portraiture and take pictures of everything else, and just to again develop my skills. So that eventually led me to go to the Art Institute of Seattle. It's no longer there anymore, but this is where I learned a lot of commercial photography and like the basics of like editorials and like studio lighting, architecture photography, just the basic skills of photography. I didn't stay there too long, so once I withdrew from Art Institute, I was like, well, I need to get a portfolio going, and I need to create a website. So again, going back to that friend circle, having my friends like help me out, being my models and helping with portraiture. So also during this time, I was working in retail. So this is important to the work that's displayed. I'm working in retail. I was doing styling. I was a stylist for this fashion show called Eco Fashion Week, and it was creating looks from thrift stores for our sponsor, which was Value Village at the time. So here's some photos from that. And I was also a merchandiser at, you guys know, American Apparel back in the day. So again, important bit of work displayed. So during that time, I was working with modeling agencies at the time, being like a test shooter for like their newly signed models. So like helping with like their confidence and like just starting their portfolio at the time. So here's some photographs from that. And then I progressed to go to Seattle Central College, mainly to learn like general studies and taking general studies classes, like English, writing, And also during this time, I was still doing the agency work, but I also started doing like event photography during this time. And I took this class called The Exotic Other, which was a combination of English literature writing and art history to talk about racism and colonization. So this was like my first exposure to like learning those theories, or not theory, but racism is real. Just learning how that you can break it down through the lens of art history. And I wrote this essay called Black Nationalism as a Commodity, which is the title of the work that's displayed here at the Bry. And I was talking about how during the Black Power movement, we had gained like this, we as a Black people, we had gained a sort of like new independence, new confidence, and a lot of brands, a lot of fashion designers were really captivated by us Black people at the time, and that's when they were kind of like really scouting Black people to promote more of like their clothing brands and just different businesses at the time. So I looked through that through like the 60s to like today. This led me to transfer to USC, University of Southern California. My portfolio that I had, I used that to get into the art department there. And this is where I learned more about the world of fine art and fine art photographers and just a wide range of artists during this time. So I was essentially growing deeper in like my consciousness. And I happily took a black and white photography class. This is my first time taking black and white photography. And I started my first series called Church Attire. And I was looking at Black churches and essentially like the fashion at Black churches. And this was also displayed at the Monroe Museum recently, last year. Back in Seattle, I had seen this Kahindi Wiley piece at the SAM, the Seattle Art Museum, and it pretty much stuck in my brain about Black men and like going to work and like attire and like our, not only Black men but Black women, our natural hair, and how like we have to kind of like either look a certain way just to fit into the workforce. And so this really inspired me for my next series. Also, during my time at USC, I became acquainted with bell hooks in a women's literature class. And this book, Real Cool, Black Men and Masculinity, it really provided like the context and the base of this new series I was working on, which is called New Culture, New Class, and where I was looking at the different generations of Black masculinity and how they were kind of like having these conversations with each other, but also how different it was. I was also reading Thelma Golden, representations of masculinity in contemporary American art. You guys should write this down, like look this up later. I'm not going to explain everybody, but she's really important, especially to the Studio Museum in Harlem. And again, these readings were readings I was doing on my own time. School wasn't really teaching me about these people, so I essentially found them out in my own research. Marlon B. Ross, Manning the Race. Lorna Simpson and I, she inspired a lot of my work, especially with blackness, talking about Black masculinity. Carrie made memes in like this one section of her Louisiana project. Lauren de Carava, who was really popular like in the late modern Renaissance, so like the 1930s. He was known for like his style with gray tones and really dark blacks. He's really known for his unique style. So again, these are just people ranging from writers, curators, photographers, painters that I was really inspired by. So this is one piece from the New Culture, New Dream class, and Black Nationalism. The photographs from that series stem from the New Culture, New class. And I wanted him to, perform and like dance to this music to show, to represent this form of like your soul leaving, like when you are like being used to promote certain things. Because sometimes I feel like, like my soul dies a little bit when I have to do like certain things. So there's like a lot of like ghostly imagery going on. I shot it at 4x5, so it was really slow shutter speed, so that it really captivated that like movement transitioning from one movement to another. And then some of you guys may know also the How It Feels to Be Colored Me series. I got tired of shooting in and focused on like a self-portrait series, and yeah. That's kind of like my last series. And now, also during that time of USC, I was studying, I had a minor in entrepreneurship. This was something my grandfather and I were working on. It's handmade products from herbs that we grow. And I'm using it as like a art in a public space practice. So incorporating my creative skills into like a product. So this is that finished product, essentially. Do the product photography and like packaging design and all that. So that concludes this presentation. Again, my name is Benicia King, and if you have any questions, this is now the time. I didn't time myself, but I think we have like maybe like 5 minutes.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
The original imagery, so to speak about the work that you have in the gallery, the first image, did you print these on various things, or is this, did you shoot it to print it on fabric, or did you arrive at that through a series of works?
Yeah, so I definitely printed it on, or I printed it in a variety of sizes at first, and then I was just like, this isn't right, and it's not really captivating what I'm trying to express with like the fashion industry, commercialization, and then I came up with the concept of, why don't I print it on fabric, and then also why don't I have it hanging like on a rack, or like it was displayed like how I would do merchandising at a store, and so hanging on the rods and having it hang on a hanger, and you can like pull it off like you're about to go shopping, like you're going to go buy this piece. So yeah.
I think it's amazing after seeing your presentation how that all fits together with your history. And I happen to see is it your mother here?
Yes. Yes, my mom's back here.
I don't get to stand and watch the gallery much as people interact, but when I was there, she was walking through the space. And as she walked by those things, they just sort of danced in space, and it was really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I felt that the fabric was the easiest way to capture my friend, who's a dancer, and like to capture that movement rather than being on paper. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. When you look at this fabulous work that's just blowing people away, I think, and then you hear the artist, in your case, Benicia, describing to us, like, how your artistic vision has changed over time. It's really important, I think, for the students here, I'm a professor myself, but it's important for the students to understand a little bit maybe about how you frame your you go from a vision to a creative plan. Like when you pivot from the masculinity studies piece to the vulnerability of shooting yourself autobiographically, how do you do that? What draws you toward the change? Do you fight against that pull? Or do you succumb to it? Or do you actually tactically plan, I'm going to do a certain number of pictures in this way, and then I've got to find a new vibe? How do you do it?
Yeah, so the transition from the masculinity series to self-portrait, I was going through a lot personally. I started the series, the masculinity series, looking at like my grandfather and my brother, because I was living with them when I moved to Los Angeles. And my grandfather passed away in 2018, so I was really depressed. And I didn't need to be in that space anymore. And so the self-portrait came about. I needed to like do some healing and like look within myself. And so that's why I ended up doing the self-portrait series. So photography for me is essentially like a representation of like my mind and like, you know, the transitions I'm going in life, and like even the work I'm working on now, it's completely different. So yeah. Any questions? Cool. Well, thank you.
Now, generally, we have this time after the presentation to go to the gallery and then interact with the artists in the gallery space. But because of COVID, you know, things change a little bit. So you do have time a little bit to ask or interact with them afterwards if you're a little camera shy and don't want to ask out loud. Or I think there's a little time to come after class. You also have one of these pieces at Louisiana Tech there. Remember what number biennial they're on?
They're on the 6th biennial.
So one of the pieces that we have in our gallery got accepted into that jury show. Okay, thank you very much.